Hey, this is David Gunn with Gunn Construction, Houston, Texas. Wanted to run a quick video uh, that I think might be helpful to a few folks. We work with a lot of clients building custom homes, and we start talking measurements a lot of times of things. And I think it might be helpful to have a quick little primer in reading a tape measure. Um, Let me pull up a screen here and talk about tape measures real quick. This will be short. First of all, if you get a tape measure, get a good one. These are a couple of Stanley tape measures I have around. They are nice quality. If you get a cheap one, you're going to regret it. These are 25-foot tape measures. Some people think bigger the better. They sell 35-foot ones. Those get really heavy to carry around. Even sometimes these 25s are heavy. On a daily basis, I carry a 16-foot tape measure typically, because that usually does most of what I need to do. And then I keep the heavy one out in my truck so that it's there when I need it, if I am measuring something long. But again, get a good one. These have a wide tape with what they call a good standout. Standout means it can support itself. It's not flimsy. You don't have to have someone help you hold it up if you're measuring something long. It's stiff enough to span whatever you're trying to measure. So get a good tape measure to start with. When you look at a tape measure, obviously it's measuring inches. We're in America, so we're measuring English imperial system, not metric system. You can get a metric tape, but not too many people are going to refer to metric measurements in the United States. So here's an open tape measure. This just showing up to about 16 inches or so. You'll notice a couple of things on here, and I want to point out. First of all these marks across the top of the tape measure and all the marks across the bottom of the tape measure are the same marks. Don't get confused to think those are marking different things. In this case, they are all the same. And typically, the smallest increment of measure on a tape measure is a 1/16 of an inch. Occasionally, you will find a tape measure that has 32 of an inch marked. You don't probably need 32 of an inch. 1/16 of an inch is going to get you close for most things that most people are doing. Most architectural plans are not drawn with dimensions beyond, a lot of times, even less than an 1/8. Sometimes a 1/16, but that may be even rare. So let's look what else is on this tape measure. It's got a heavy mark at the 1 foot. You see it's got an arrow there. Typically, every foot is going to have a heavy mark so that at a quick note, you can see where 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, 4 foot, so forth. This tape measure has a red mark at 16 inches. That is a stud layout. You're probably not going to need that unless you're a framing carpenter. But you'll notice on a tape measure that every 16 inches, there's going to be a mark. That is so you can lay out studs that fall out on 16-inch centers. Let me go to a little blow up of this tape measure. Again, the heavy mark at 1 foot, top row and bottom row are the same. The red mark here marks a 16-inch center for stud layout. You'll also notice that numbers here start being marked in red. So when we get to 13 inches, I also have a mark that says 1 inch. Well, that is 1 inch for that foot. So for example, we have a mark here in the blue at 14.5 inches. We could either say it's 14.5 inches, or we could say that it is 1 foot, 2.5 inches. That's what those red numbers mark so that you know how that's going along. A tape measure is really a function of 6th grade middle school fractions. And here I noted what the fractions are. So you can look at these different marks. Again, the top numbers and the bottom numbers are the same. They are both marking 16th of an inch increments. So within 1 inch, we have 16 sixteenths. And And of course, you can combine those to get all kinds of different fractions, and that'll take you back to 6th grade. But here across the top, I marked, 1/16, 3/16, 5/16, 7/16, 9, 11, 13, and 15. Across the bottom, I marked our, 1/8, 1/4, 3/8, 1/2 inch. That's the easy one. Half's always in the middle. 5/8, 3/4, and 7/8. So you can add any number of those together. Let me jump over to another sheet and I will show you a quick little primer in 6th grade math. This has a few notes of things we already talked about, but let's go here to the middle. An example of 1/2 inch plus 3/16. If you're going to add those together, you've got to get a common denominator. The easy common denominator there is 16. So 1/2 is the same as 8/16. So if we add 8/16 plus our 3/16, we would get 11/16. As another example, to add 3/4 plus 3/8, for example, we'd have to get a common denominator of 8. 3/4 is the same as 6/8. So 6/8 plus 3/8 would be 9/8. That's one more eighth than a whole. So the answer there is 1 1/8. Just as a couple of examples. Now, sometimes you will hear a carpenter, for example, reference a measurement, and sometimes they use some slang or some short wording to explain measurements. Sometimes you might hear someone say, "Hey, I need a board cut 24 and 7." That is a way of saying they want it 24 7/16. Sometimes that you might hear somebody measure an opening and say it's 19 and 7. Again, 7/16. 19 and 11. 11/16. So really, like I said, it's pretty much a basic lesson in 6th or 7th grade, fractions, adding and subtracting. Even I do it sometimes, that you look at a tape, and if you get confused, you can just count up the numbers. You can add up, again, if you remember that it's divided into 16ths, and there are 16 16ths in that inch, you can count off your little tick marks and come up with an answer. And if you need to add fractions, sometimes I do that too. Rather than doing the math on paper, I'll look at it on the tape measure and add up 2 different increments to come up with the right answer. Thanks so much. If you got any questions about that, feel free to drop me a line. Always willing to answer a question. Hope that's helpful. Thanks.